Hello and welcome to this week's Different League show, sponsored by Betfred. So it's FA Cup fourth round this weekend. And if it's as exciting as the third round was, we are in for some very good football and some possible big shocks as well. Delighted to say Alex Bruce is alongside Mark and myself. Alex, how are you?
I'm okay, thank you.
Bit of a journey down, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was okay, yeah. The M40 was a joy to say the least.
And vans carrying stuff.
Yeah, leave it at that, yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Look, you're doing some consultancy work as an agent at the moment. How's that going?
Yeah, it's going well, actually. I've enjoyed it to see how the other half lives, should we say, the agency side of things, doing a bit of consultancy work. So, yeah, it's been enjoyable, keeping me busy anyway.
You actually have to work.
Yeah, 9 to 5, I'm not used to it.
Look, let's talk about this week's big talking points, shall we? And we start with Wayne Rooney as well. Last weekend announced his retirement from playing, now the permanent Derby boss. Where does he stand for you in terms of greatest ever England players?
I think he has to be right up there as a striker. I mean, he broke the goal scoring record, didn't he? So that tells you itself that for me, he was phenomenal. I mean, I was fortunate enough to play against Wayne and played against him in his peak as well. And unless you've played against him and experienced how good he was, his aggression, his natural ability, he was an unbelievable player. And like we've seen many times before in the past, you don't really get the credit and the praise that probably you deserve until you've actually retired. And I think we've seen some of the plaudits this week, which he's received, which he rightly deserves.
What made him so difficult? I mean, obviously we can see from the outside. I actually played against Wayne Rooney. He was at Everton at the time. I'm that old. But he came off the bench 16, 17 years of age. So I'm really proud to say I've been on the same pitch as him.
Yeah.
I think an absolutely incredible player. Manchester United's greatest ever goal scorer. England's greatest ever goal scorer. And yet I still don't feel he's been given enough appreciation. If you look at the top strikers, the greatest strikers this country's ever produced, Jimmy Greaves, Alan Shearer, Michael Owen, Ian Wright, people like that, only he could play out wide as a number 6, as a number 8, as a number 4, as a footballer, probably only behind Sir Bobby Charlton in my opinion. But coming up against him, what was he like? I
think exactly what you've just said there, Scott. You could play him in any position. His tenacity, his appetite for the game. He's the kind of player you'd want in your five-a-side, isn't he? The way he's just so robust, always fit, never injured, mentally tough. He had everything. And for me, as you say, he was one of the greatest, if not the greatest England striker of all time. God knows why he doesn't get the plaudits he deserves, in my opinion, when you speak about some of the great players that have played as well. But for me, Wayne was phenomenal.
Mark?
I think the reason he doesn't, and it's not necessarily something I sort of agree with, but I think the reason he doesn't is because he was sort of part of finals tournament teams that were seen to have underachieved. And if you think particularly, I suppose, sort of 2010 would have been sort of one that he would have been hoping to sort of dominate, and that didn't happen. I mean, England were really poor around about that period. So
2006 as well.
Yeah, I've 2004 and 2006. I actually felt that, I know he obviously, he had the red card, but I didn't feel like that was as bad as the Capello team that went to South Africa that just wasn't very good. And so I suppose he was kind of the figurehead of that. So that's why he gets dragged down. But the fact that he was Manchester United's greatest goal scorer, and you look at the players that Manchester United have had over the years, he was part of that front three with Tevez and Cristiano Ronaldo that I think was definitely the best in the Premier League era anyway. That was just incredible, and part of that was the fact that they could all play in any of the positions in that front forward line, and the fluidity of them.
It would be a nightmare to play against them there.
Played against them. I've only just unravelled myself. But I think you're right what you said. I think that time when Wayne was in his peak as well, that Barcelona team that they played in the Champions League final at Wembley, I think Wayne scored a goal that day and he was actually United's best player. Yeah. I think that then couple of years round about that time, he deserved to play for the greatest teams in Europe because he was that good, and it was just unfortunate that Barcelona had such a phenomenal side where they actually toyed with Manchester United on that occasion, if I remember rightly, but Wayne was the shining light in that Manchester United team.
2004, I still say that we would have won the Euros if he'd have stayed fit, but it's hypothetical, I suppose, isn't it? How do you think he'll do as a manager?
Well, his work ethic, and if he carries that over, and his tenacity, and what I know for a fact what he'll demand from his players is a work rate like what he showed as a player. I think if he takes that into management, he'll stand a chance. I think it's important he doesn't get too high with the highs, too low with the lows, like they say. He's it's going to be a tough job, the Derby one, with the financial situation, what's being reported at the moment. But if I know Wayne, he'll go and give it a good crack, that's for sure.
You mentioned the sort of golden generation that he was a part of. There's a few becoming managers now, isn't there? Steven Gerrard at Rangers, Frank Lampard at Chelsea, and Phil Neville now gone over to Inter Miami.
It surprises me a little bit. Obviously, they love football, but part of that sort of generation don't need to work and could, quite easily earn the money sort of if they wanted to keep busy, just, floating around TV and doing other things. So the fact that they've sort of put that pressure on themselves, I think speaks volumes. Hard to say with Rooney. I mean, he's so early on, and Gerrard's obviously doing very well at Rangers, the way he's turned that around. Lampard, is taking on a difficult job at Chelsea. He's receiving some flack at the moment.
And yet 2 months ago, or not even 2 months ago,
he was in great form.
People were talking about title challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose Phil Neville is the one. Quite lucky, I think he's got the Inter Miami job. He's got friends in the higher places, but who's to say that it will do badly? It's just obviously he's got that opportunity, which others will say, I haven't had that chance. So I think at the moment, Gerrard's the one that's looking the best, but early days.
Yeah, difficult one to call, but who do you think will be the most successful? Well, it's impossible to call, I suppose.
It's so difficult to call. I think because there have been such great players, there's no given right that they're going to be great managers. We've seen that before in the past. I think if I had to pick one, I would think Frank. I know he's having a tough time at the minute, but I just think the way he speaks, his philosophy on the game, I think he's an intelligent lad. And one thing's for sure in management, I can tell you this from seeing my old man at home on numerous occasions, being a manager is a roller coaster. You're going to have ups and downs, and even though Frank's only been doing it 2-3 years now, that'll be a pattern that his managerial career will take. You'll be flavour of the month a couple of months ago, and now all of a sudden everyone's calling for his head. So it's the nature of the beast of what they've gone into.
We'll come on to your dad in just a little bit.
Do we have to?
Let's talk about the January transfer window, shall we? I mean, it's been reasonably quiet, hasn't it? But the Mesut Ozil saga is finally over. The most talked about player in world football that doesn't play. He's about to play, or is he? It's still not been confirmed yet by Arsenal.
No, it hasn't. I mean, if it doesn't get confirmed, he's going to look a little bit silly. He's been wearing the Fenerbahce scarf. He needed to leave Arsenal. Arteta had made it clear that he wasn't part of the plans, and you can't really have somebody of sort of 23, 24 knocking around who's not part of the plans. Never mind somebody that's won a World Cup and is on the kind of money that he is on. So he needs to play. I think he deserves to play somewhere. He's taking a step down in level. The Turkish league, I think, would be a good one for him, where he can sort of dominate and still be able to show his best. But spoke about Gareth Bale when he re-signed for Tottenham. He's just not probably the same player now that when he left, and it's probably the same with Ozil. And when he won the World Cup, when he was at Real Madrid, when he first went to Arsenal, that player's probably just not there anymore.
Yeah, still will have the talent, but the fitness will be an issue as well. How much harm has the last year been done to him, and how important was it for him to get playing football again? But also from Arsenal's point of view, how important is this for the saga to be over? Because Mikel Arteta must be so bored of answering questions all the time about it. It's almost like a monkey off the back, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's been well documented, the wages that he's got. That he had at Arsenal, I should say. As a club, they'll be pleased to get him out the door for that reason. I think Arteta will be pleased where he doesn't have to, as I say, answer the questions. I mean, the performance that they had against Newcastle the other night, where they played really well, and then straight away the journalists are asking, what about Ozil? He won't have that to deal with anymore. And I think for Mesut himself, like you and I know, when you get to a certain age, when you've not played for a year, it's important you get the boots back on sharpish, because you can fall off a cliff no matter how good you are. We've seen it with players in the past. So the fact that he's got that opportunity to go to Fenerbahce and get himself playing again, it might not be the intensity of the Premier League, but you never lose that little bit of class that he's got, that natural left foot where he's like a wand, isn't it? We've seen it many times before. So I'm sure if he goes to Fenerbahce, he'll do really well. Yeah.
Danny Ings has come out and said that he wants to be at a Champions League club. What's been reported anyway, because a 4-year contract offer to make him Southampton's highest ever paid player, is on the table. Not signing it yet. What do we make of that?
Well, I can understand why he's not signing it. He's in a great position of strength at the moment.
He's 28 now, isn't he? So this is an important contract.
It is, yeah. I mean, it'll probably be the sort of biggest one of his career and his last sort of major one. I think, though, as long as sort of Southampton are heading in the right direction, I think Southampton's about the right club for him, because when he went to Liverpool previously, I know he had injuries, but I'm not sure you want to be necessarily competing with that front three and players like that. Joe Hart spoke about this actually when he signed for Tottenham. Said he'd rather be a sub at somewhere where it feels like this, it's all happening and it's big. I tend to think if you're a striker like Danny Ings, just play every week for a team that supplies you, as long as the money's right and the team's heading in the right direction. I think I'd rather stay at Southampton and just play every week.
How do you see it, Alex? You can understand the ambition, especially with his age, but Mark's right, isn't he? You want to be playing. We've just been talking about Mesut Ozil.
Well, like we say there about Joe Hart, I totally disagree with that, what Joe said. I mean, for me, the thought of going to a big club, just to sit on the bench, seeing my teammates play every week and win things and be successful, and I'm sat on the bench doing nothing, it would break my heart. I think any footballer, if they've got anything about them, would want to play every week, and that's the dilemma that Danny's got. I can understand he's 28 years old. It's his big contract. He's got a family to look after and all the rest of it. He might go and get more money, say, somewhere else, but will he necessarily play? I think the big thing Danny needs to do is play football. And if he's got any aspirations to get in the England squads, have any recognition in international football, then he needs to play. He's experienced what it's like being at a big club at Liverpool. He was unfortunate with injuries. However, he also experienced what it's like to sit on the bench every week. So he's got to choose his decisions wisely.
Final one on the Jan window. Over in Italy, Mario Mandzukic has signed for AC Milan until the end of the season. Joined Zlatan. He's 34. Zlatan's 39. Zlatan 12 goals in 8 games and an assist as well.
I mean, when he went to MLS, it looked like he was just winding down his career. But I think when he went there, he missed that sort of real competitiveness and felt that he still had more to offer. Mandzukic is an absolute warrior that can play up front in sort of Ibrahimovic's position, can attack the far post as well out wide. I was in Turin once, it was in like November, December time, watching Juventus when we were allowed to travel. Do you remember that? But so he was
just
there.
About.
I mean, I had about 8 layers on. Most of the Juventus subs had equally. They were warming up, but that way that footballers warm up, where they're kind of not really trying and they're just sort of there on the touchline. Mandzukic had just a t-shirt on and was going through a proper warm up while everybody else was limbering up. And I think that's the way that he just attacks every day. And if you're top of the league in Italy, you've got a mainly young team outside of Ibrahimovic. Bringing in another player like that probably is, I think it ticks a lot of boxes for what Milan are trying to do.
Okay, well, let's have a look at this week's social section where we take a look at some of the funny things that have happened or been posted across the last week on social media. First up, it is Fernando Torres aprovechado el retire para ponerse en forma, which basically means he's taken advantage of his retirement to put himself in form and looking fit. I mean, fit. He has beefed up. Has he eaten his brother or something?
I don't know what was more impressive, your Spanish or his muscles, to be honest. Wow, I could do with his workout regime, couldn't I?
Could you move as a player being that big?
I wouldn't fancy taking an elbow off him, that's for sure.
No. I'm just thinking, during lockdown, my sort of weight's gone on the belly rather than the arms. So maybe I should have taken Torres's sort of outlook on workout life.
My goodness, the personal trainer must be coining it in. He's certainly looking big. Okay, second up, it is sibling banter cannot be matched. So Son Heung-min's brother gives ruthless response when reporter points out he played in the Champions League final. The reporter said he's played in the Champions League final. His brother said, yeah, but he lost. That is harsh, isn't it?
Well, I mean, Son has spoken before about how much his family have sort of driving forward his dad, very much sort of made him work very hard on being 2-footed, and I mean it's worked well, but obviously the brothers equally as demanding of Son. Some people would love to play in a Champions League final, but obviously not good enough for him.
Yeah, a little bit harsh, but at least he's played in a Champions League final.
Exactly, I'd give him a right arm to play in a Champions League final, but brotherly love, eh?
Indeed. Okay, let's go to the different league Q&A section now, where we ask a couple of questions to our guest. £25 Amazon voucher goes to Jack Murphy, and Harry Thorpe won as well. Jack's question was, who was the best attacker, or who was the attacker you'd hate to play against, and who was the player you'd always have in your pocket?
I didn't have many in my pocket, I have to be honest, Scott.
So first up, what's the attacker you'd hate to play against that's playing now?
The attacker that I'd hate to play
Or
against.
even that you played against?
Anyone with natural pace, really. I remember playing against Thierry Henry. I was fortunate enough to play against him. Sure, did you play against him as well?
Yeah, for 20 minutes I was thinking, go on the other side.
Yeah, please go on the other side. I had a similar experience. I showed him the line and it was a really bad thing to do, Scott. Yeah, he took it all right. I could just see his backside running 25 yards.
I knew how to spell his name by the end of the game.
Yeah, definitely. So, yes, anyone with real blistering pace, I think pace is the greatest asset you can have as a forward player. And when you're playing like a Rashford, for example, now, when they're on song, he's a fantastic player. Who I had in my pocket, I'd say it's a very, very difficult one. I used to enjoy playing against people who had a physical presence. I had a really good day actually against Luis Suarez for Hull, one of my better days, which is a bit of a claim to fame. Yeah, we beat Liverpool 3-1, I think, on a Sunday afternoon, and that was one of my better days. So I'd probably say, yeah, that was a good experience.
Okay, next up from Harry, Newcastle are in a poor vein of form. What do they need to do to get out of this rut?
I think you need to batten down the hatches, like any team who have poor vein of forms. I think if you're in the bottom 6 to 8 teams in the league, like probably where Newcastle are at the moment, where everybody expected them to be at the beginning of the season, there's always going to be a time in the season where they have a tough patch. They've had some tough games, Leicester, Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal twice. Really, really difficult fixtures, as well as some poor performances as well. There's no getting away from that. So I think when you're up against it, as I say, you've got to batten down the hatches. You've got to roll your sleeves up and work hard and dig in for one another. That's the only thing that the players can do, that my dad can do, staff. Forget all the outside noise. Roll your sleeves up and try and get out of the mess that they're in. And that counts not only for Newcastle, but for all the teams that are down there scrapping. That's the way it is year in, year out, and it's no different now.
I'm perhaps not going to make myself popular with Newcastle fans, but I think with what they've been used to in the past and where they are now, two completely different situations. The type of player they're bringing in, lower end Premier League player. So if you bring in a lower end Premier League player, you're going to get lower end Premier League positions and lower end Premier League football.
Yeah.
But to play devil's advocate, in terms of, a lot of the Newcastle fans are complaining about the style. Mm-hmm. They tried to open up against Arsenal and look what happened. But how would you answer that?
It's a very difficult question, and I know it's one that my dad toys with all the time, is he would love to be expansive. However, and it's no disrespect to any of the Newcastle players, when you look at what they've got, for example, at the back, when Lascelles doesn't play, they're not blessed with natural pace, any of the back lot. So if he opens up and he has them, say, 4 at the back, and you have your wing-backs pushing up and your full-backs, leave space down the sides, it can, especially with the height of quality that the Premier League possesses, can leave big open spaces down the sides. So it's a problem where he has to fill the gaps, and sometimes by filling the gaps and putting bodies in areas, it takes that little bit of an edge off going forward. When you open up and you go expansive like they did against Arsenal the other night, you could see the frailties because they got done on the counter-attack. So it's finding that balance, and that's the difficult thing that he's struggling with at the minute.
Yeah, Lascelles and Sir Maximin still not quite 100%, I think, which has been a real shame. I personally don't think anything's going to change until there's a change of owner. And then when money's in, your old man can get a bit of money, get a bit of a higher quality of play, with respect to the players that are there at the moment.
Of course, yeah. I mean, he can only deal with what he's got, and he has a good working relationship with everybody at the club. He's trying his best. I know that for a fact. There's been some bad performances, yes, we know that, but there's been some good ones as well. They just need to keep grinding it out. And as you say, when they get St Maximin back fit, he'll give them that attacking threat to take them up the pitch and give them a bit of excitement, that's for sure.
Okay, Jack and Harry, hope you're happy with those answers. Newcastle fans, hope you're happy too. Probably not, but we understand exactly the frustrations and a massive club like Newcastle, where they've been in the past. Let's move on now, shall we? FA Cup 4th round weekend. Some game this one. Chorley from the National League North up against Wolverhampton Wanderers from the Premier League. Now, Mark, Chorley beat Derby in the last round. May have been a very youthful Derby, of course, but how big a shock would this be if they were to beat Wolves?
Oh no, this would be one of. I mean, they've beaten Wolves before. It was one of sort of Wolves' sort of most, I suppose, shameful results, if you like. They're sort of when they were beaten by Chorley. I mean, for a non-league team now to be able to beat a Premier League team, it's almost sort of unthinkable. I think the gulf has grown so much. You think to when sort of like Wrexham beat Arsenal, for instance, big gap then, but that was a long time ago. I think football's changed a lot since then. This would be an incredible upset. I don't think it will happen, but I'm so pleased that they've got this opportunity, because the Derby game was great for Chorley because they won and more money, but there would have been, you get to the 3rd round of the FA Cup, you're hoping to get a star attraction, like play against Wayne Rooney maybe, but they had to play against sort of, players they never heard of. They were the favourites to win the game, so that they've got their moment now against Wolves. Wolves are looking, more vulnerable than they have done at any other stage under Nuno. But there's such a mighty golfing class.
Yeah, I've been at the right end of a shock and the wrong end of a shock. Remember, I was at Charlton in the Championship and we beat Blackburn when they were a real powerhouse in the early to mid 90s. Lost when I was at West Ham at Tranmere,
right,
which wasn't great as well. What upsets have you had, and how difficult is it when you go to a smaller team with a smaller stadium? And it's a real shame there's no fans around.
I remember playing at Chester for Ipswich. I had one of the worst games of my life. I had an absolute nightmare, and they were just rattling into. It was a horrible pitch. I remember the sun was in our eyes. It was a really difficult surface to play on. It was just a nightmare performance from us, and we were lucky that we actually took it to a replay and we got through in the end. But that was my closest to a real upset. I remember my first season in football, I went on loan to Oldham. It was actually my 2nd game in professional football, and we beat Man City in the FA Cup. We were League One at the time and they were in the Premier League, and we won 1-0, which was a bit of an upset. About 15, 16 years ago now, unfortunately. So yeah, I've been on the end of a good result, which is always nice.
You mentioned Wolves. They're really not in good form at the moment, are they? No winning 6 in the league. They've lost 4 of those. They're 14th in the league at the moment. No Jimenez, the main striker. Jota obviously gone. And they're not playing at home. Now, even though there's no fans, I do think that does make a difference.
Yeah, I totally agree that, and it's the body language really of Nuno as well. It didn't feel right in the summer, and then they seemed to sort it out, and they spent some money towards the end of the window, and they started the season okay. But against West Brom, he I don't know, it was a really odd sort of performance from them in the second half particularly. It's a young team. I think they were so settled for a couple of years. Everybody knew what they were doing. He's trying to bring through younger players. I think that ultimately that will be for the success of Wolves. It may be in a couple of years' time, but there are short-term pains to be had. They've moved away from the back three. Maybe that's because they haven't got a left wing back properly at the moment that he can trust. Johnny, you mentioned Jimenez being out. I think Johnny, really underrated player for Wolves, and they ran really well with injuries during their sort of golden period in the Premier League. Their squad was always small, and now they're paying for that really because the injuries have stacked up. And I think Nuno needs to lift himself as well as the players, though. Okay,
Betfred selection. I'm going to go for you first because I think you've pretty much told us who you think.
Yeah, I think Wolves will win this game, and I think win to nil is a fair enough price. Yeah.
Okay, Alex, you going for a shock?
I do think Wolves will win. I have to just put that out there now. But for the romance of the cup, I'm going for a Chorley win. I think it'll be big odds. Horrible pitch. It'll be a horrible day in the north of England as well. So why not? Chorley win.
I spent some time looking at possible shocks, not just surprises. There's only really, I think, Plymouth at Bramall Lane would be a real shock.
Yeah.
If it was at Plymouth, I could fancy them doing it.
Mm.
This is the one shock I'm going for.
Yeah.
I think Wolves are in a really bad place at the moment. I think Chorley are on a high, got absolutely nothing to lose. It would be probably a terrible pitch.
Yeah.
It may be penalties.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you. I'm going with Chorley as well.
They could be singing Adele again.
It could be. Okay, game preview 2 on Saturday. It is Southampton against Arsenal. And Mark, since Christmas Day, we touched on this last week, but now it's been 5 wins, 1 draw for Arsenal. And there's a lot of positives, especially with the youngsters right now.
Yeah, I mean, Smith Rowe and Saka particularly have really, I think, upped the intensity of the play and added an attacking impetus that was missing from them at one stage. And Saka was playing as a fullback, wasn't he, at times, but getting him much higher up the pitch has helped. And I think they missed the number 10. They had nobody linking the play together. Smith Rowe has come in, looks like he's been doing that job for a long time. And I think from Arsenal's point of view, it's good to see that Arteta stuck by what he was trying to do and is now coming out of the other side of it. If you were putting a kind of asterisk next to it, you would say, well, if you have a look at the teams they've beaten, all of them are in bad form, even down to the kind of headline result against Chelsea. I mean, Chelsea's away performances haven't been up to scratch, have they? So I wouldn't go overboard about Arsenal just yet, but they're clearly heading in a better direction than they were at Christmas.
Massive positive with Aubameyang. Looks like he's possibly back on the score sheet. Got 2 against Newcastle, of course. How important is it for Arsenal they just get him back and scoring?
Well, for any team, when you've got your main goal scorers playing well, Aubameyang's just shown a nice little bit of form the last couple of games. I think Lacazette's come into the fore as well. He's improved a lot in recent weeks, as well as the youngsters like you just touched on there, who have come in and grabbed their opportunity. So I think Mikel, they had a dark spell a couple of months ago, but I think they're slowly getting out of it with the form of them players. Yeah,
it's gone from Ollie to Mikel to Frank now, hasn't it, in terms of the pressure. Southampton beat Shrewsbury in the 3rd round last night. First thing I want to say as well is all the very best to Steve Cottrell, the Shrews manager, who I think watched the game, but he's certainly in hospital at the moment with COVID. So Steve, all the very best. We hope you get back to health very soon. But Southampton, a team that more than capable of going far in this competition.
They will, yeah. I mean, if you have a look at sort of since that result against Tottenham, when they got hit, they were like the first team to get hit by that kind of Kane and Son counter-attack. Maybe weren't expecting it quite so much. But since then, the only times they've lost have been against the real sort of top-level teams. It's Manchester United, Man City and Leicester. They've beaten Liverpool. The team he picked against Shrewsbury suggested he felt like they could get through, and he was resting a couple for this potential game against Arsenal. And they'll see the FA Cup a bit like, say, West Ham and things, as a real opportunity to have a go. I mean, they're safely in a nice position in the Premier League. The FA Cup offers them and a number of teams like that, an opportunity to win a trophy.
Yeah, and I think when there's 2 teams in a cup competition that are quite similar, strength of team selection is so important. Do you think one manager, can you see them picking a stronger side more than the other, or how do you see that?
No, purely because that both teams are in good form, and I think that both managers will respect one another and think this is going to be a really difficult game. I think Southampton, the way they play, I've seen them a couple of times this season, the likes of Ward-Prowse, Ings. I think Walcott will have a bit between his teeth for this game as well, playing against Arsenal. So I think it'll be a really, really good cup tie.
Okay, your Betfred selection for this one?
I'm going for Southampton. I've said that Ings to score any time and Southampton to win.
I'm with you on that one. I'm going with Southampton as well. Mark?
Yeah, full house for Southampton. I just feel like Arsenal maybe been a little bit overrated with what's happened in recent weeks.
Okay. Game preview 3, also Saturday. League 2 Cheltenham up against the powerhouse that is Manchester City. Now, Alex, there are some Premier League teams where you think they're going away here in the Cup. They're vulnerable. I don't think that was City to you.
No, definitely not. I think they're just so good. They're a joy to watch the way they play the game. I just think they'll have too much quality for most Premier League teams. Never mind Cheltenham, no disrespect. I think if it's a glamorous cup tie, and I'm sure the Cheltenham, it's unfortunate they can't play with a full house and the attendances and what have you. But I just think they'll have far too much for them.
A lot of the time it's about mentality, isn't it, of the big clubs. But again, under Pep, we saw it with Barcelona, we saw it with Bayern Munich as well, but we've seen it with Manchester City. He takes, like Jose Mourinho, every cup game seriously.
Well, you just had to see him in the dugout against Birmingham in the last round. Man City were absolutely cruising in the game, and he was going mad in the technical area, demanding that the players move the ball quicker, take the chances properly, and he was just so intense on his players, and I don't think he'd be any different at the weekend. Yeah,
Cheltenham in League 2 haven't won in the last 7 league games. City love any trophy, don't they? I mean, Would this be a bigger upset than Chorley beating Wolves?
Oh, I think it would. I mentioned that sort of the gulf between non-league and Wolves, but I suppose you could sort of make a case for thinking that Wolves are vulnerable at the moment. City are playing their best stuff of the season. They're looking really comfortable. They've got a massive squad that they can rotate any number of players and bring in ones that are equally as good. And you mentioned they're Cheltenham not in great form. I mean, they conceded a goal from a goalkeeper last night. The Newport keeper, King, scored from a goal kick. So, I don't know if Ederson or Steffens maybe got one eye on that. I was speaking to somebody that's watched Cheltenham a little bit. He said probably their only chance of a goal, they've got Tozer, who's got a long throw, and so you can sort of just put balls, into, you don't have to do anything special to put a ball into the box there. But I mean, City have dealt with that time and time again, and I'm sure Guardiola won't take the game lightly, and that often is where an upset happens, is where the team takes their eye off the ball. I don't see it.
Okay, Betfred selection for this one.
I'm going Man City win by 3 goals.
Are you looking at what I'm saying as well? Because I'm that's exactly what I've said.
Yeah.
City to win by 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think correct scores, sort of 3-0, 4-0, something you could sort of split them, and you'll probably have a good run for your money.
Okay, game preview 4 on Sunday. It is Chelsea up against Luton. Chelsea lost to Leicester last night. Leicester went top, so there's no disgrace in that, I suppose. But what's your take on the bad run that Chelsea are in and the supposed pressure that Frank Lampard is under?
I think the price of what he paid in the summer for certain players will always highlight why he's under a little bit of pressure. But I think it's a difficult one for Frank because he's got a blend of young players and players who are coming to the Premier League. We've seen before that good players have came and not took to it straight away. I think that's a classic example of what's happening at Chelsea. I think they've signed good players in the likes of Havertz, Timo Werner, for example, not quite hit the ground running yet. I say yet, they'll be hoping it's a yet rather than being a flop. And they've got young players as well who are coming in. They've had the transfer situation where they couldn't sign any players over the last couple of years. So throw that all into the mix. I never really expected Chelsea to be title contenders, even though they spend a lot of money. So I just think they need to give Frank time. I think his heart's in the right place. He's doing well, and he's still a relatively inexperienced manager. I just think they need to stick with him and they just need to ride this time out.
Yeah, I saw Jamie Carragher saying about, I think it's Mikel Arteta, sometimes you just need to go through the pain, and then if you feel you've got the right man, and that's what I feel. But obviously, as you say, the amount of money being spent thrown at him, Roman Abramovich, the history of him getting rid of managers is always there as well. Are people jumping on the bandwagon, or is this a serious problem right now?
I mean, I think there were always some people that were lining it up from before that felt that he shouldn't have got the job in the first place. From one season at Derby doesn't mean you should get the Chelsea job, and so they've kind of been waiting for this run to almost happen to sort of have a go. I think if you appoint somebody that's inexperienced, you can't expect the finished product straight away. I mean, they knew what they were sort of getting, and it presumably was a long-term project. So I do feel though that I still can't work out what the best 11 of Chelsea are. And I sort of, you think of it yourself, don't you? Or what team would I play? And I think there might be a case for they've got too many players. And they've got 3 frontline centre forwards in Giroud, Abraham, and Timo Werner. Havertz and Mount, are they sort of similar-ish players that want to play in the same position? Can you play both of them together? Maybe not, but obviously Mason Mount is somebody that Lampard feels like he can rely on every single week. The wingers, got so many wingers, but you can't play all of them. It can be an issue when you've got too many players. Another problem though is that I just don't think they're defending well enough, and whether that's individually or collectively, the second goal against Leicester was really poor last night. That shouldn't be happening, and that needs to be ironed out.
I think Reece James is going through a bit of a dip at the moment. Kante's not the player he was at the moment, but you'd expect him to come back. Could it be the question that Frank perhaps knows his best 11, but when he plays them, the players aren't playing well enough?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it before, haven't we, Scott?
Which then is that down to Frank, or is that down to the players?
It's easy to point the finger at the manager. I think sometimes players have got to look in the mirror and take responsibility. It's easy to hide behind your manager. They're not the one kicking the ball on a pitch when they step over the white line. The manager's put faith in you. So ultimately it comes to the players rolling the sleeves up and doing their job. Reece James, for example, there, you can say that he's having a dip of form. He's just had an operation in his knee, I think. I think he's just coming back from that. He's a young player as well, so I'd cut him a little bit of slack. I just think the players need to dig in, like I keep saying, and I think the quality's there. They just need to improve defensively. I think they need to get a settled 2 centre-halves. That's one thing that I think is very important. And just build from there, really.
Even in the most successful seasons, there are ups and downs throughout that season, aren't there? So, as you say, have to go through it. Let's touch on Luton and the job that Nathan Jones has done, because to keep them up last season was amazing. And as we speak, they're top half of the Championship.
I mean, I saw them in League Two and in League One, and I was really excited about him as a coach. You had the midfield diamond and James Justin down one fullback. Stacey went to Bournemouth down the other one, and sort of it was a really exciting team to watch. I then saw his Stoke team, and he was never able, and whether there were issues with the dressing room, he was never able to impose his sort of style on that team, and it was they were awful to watch, and it didn't feel like maybe sometimes it's just the right man for the right club. And we were talking about Danny Ings earlier, and sometimes you maybe are better off just staying somewhere that's more in your comfort zone. And certainly at Luton, he's got them going again. I think they're much better at home than what they are away from home. The Bournemouth game last week, they were helped by the early red cards to Lerma. So I think he's done a brilliant job at Luton, and helped as well by the fact there were no fans, because I think some of them would have turned on him coming back because they were unhappy that he left. So the fact that he was able to come back at a time when by the time they are back in the Kenilworth Road, that they'll remember the good times again.
Yeah, I think Frank would be happy it's at Stamford Bridge rather than Kenilworth Road, right? Even though there aren't any fans there. So, how strong a side do you think you'll pick, and what's your Betfred selection here?
I think Frank's got to pick a strong side. I think he'll see it as a game where he can regain a bit of confidence within the squad. I think that's the way they need to approach the game. So I think a Chelsea win, and I've gone for Tammy Abraham anytime to score.
Okay.
I've gone for Timo Werner to score first. He picked him against Morecambe to try to boost his confidence. I'm assuming he'll do the same again. And he was really unlucky against Leicester with that offside goal. He's real fraction. So maybe the better times, I think, are ahead for Werner.
I'm going to mention him a little bit later, but I'm going for Chelsea to win 2-0 in this one. I think it will be a confidence-boosting game for everybody at Stamford Bridge. Okay, game preview 5. It's a deja vu here. It's Manchester United versus Liverpool. Now, it was Liverpool versus Manchester United last week in the league. What did you make of it? It's billed as, it wasn't first versus second as kickoff, but going into the weekend, it certainly was. And United as well, because Ole Gunnar Solskjaer said that he was disappointed and he saw it as a missed opportunity after the game.
I think it looked like two teams desperate not to lose, if I'm being brutally honest. I think Manchester United had the better of the chances, the two in the second half, Paul Pogba's in particular. With it being a cup tie, you'd like to think it opens up a little bit and they're a little bit more dynamic in the way they both play. There's a few more risks taken, which will bode for an exciting game, hopefully. But I just think there's that many players on show and that much quality. We want to see a top quality game, don't we? So fingers crossed that's what we'll get.
What did you take from last week's game? Do you see United as real title contenders?
Well, I mean, I think you have to consider them as contenders. I would still have them comfortably behind Man City and Liverpool, and City at the moment are the team that everybody, or most people certainly fancy. I didn't feel like the game was quite as bad as what a lot of others did. I don't know if I'm trying to be a bit hipsterish about it, but I mean, I felt like it started off okay, and United offered the threat in the second half. What I took mainly from it was the Liverpool not being at it in the forward line. I think Firmino's not playing very well, and in midfield and also with the fullback positions, they're unable to take the risk because they're worried about the two centre halves. And why wouldn't you? I mean, you've got Henderson and Fabinho there.
Yeah. And although Fabinho was brilliant.
He looks like a centre. He'd probably be Van Dijk's long-term partner now. But Henderson, they miss something when Henderson's not in midfield. Yeah. And I do feel like the fullbacks are just not quite as adventurous because you wouldn't want to isolate Henderson against a Martial or something like that.
What, if anything, can either manager take from last week's game into this week's game? And does it make a difference it being at Old Trafford rather than at Anfield?
I think that the home advantage always stacks up, even if you've got no supporters in the ground. I think it'll benefit Manchester United, of course. I think if anyone can take anything out of the game, I think Jurgen Klopp will take the fact that he can play Henderson and Fabinho at centre half and do all right against the potent Manchester United front three. However, I think with Man United being at home, Ollie will look at it and think, right, it's really time to go and attack this Liverpool back four and see what they're made of. So, as I say, it bodes well for a good cup tie.
Do you see it being full strength sides from both managers, or do you think there'll be changes?
Absolutely full strength. I can't see a Manchester United Liverpool game being any different.
Okay, Betfred selection for this one then.
I think there'll be a penalty in the game. I think Bruno Fernandes will score and Manchester United to win.
I'm going to go for a draw again. I think it's hard to separate them, and United have had so many draws against sort of the bigger teams, if you like, this season. They had one against Man City. They've had the Liverpool one. Leicester was a draw as well. So yeah, another draw.
I think Liverpool were excellent in the first half. How good was Thiago spraying the ball around? Amazing player.
Yeah.
But I think United did create the better chances, and yeah, I think they could sneak this one, especially being at home.
Picking the same things, aren't we?
Okay, Monday it is Wycombe against Spurs, and Wycombe are fighting to stay in the Championship. Used to be in the underdog. So, how tricky do you see this tie for Spurs?
I think it's going to be a really tricky tie, I have to say. I think it's a chance for Wycombe to put the Championship form behind them. It's a chance to go into a cup game where the gloves are off. There's no real expectation that they're going to win. So they can just go and play their normal game and hopefully put in a good performance and try and get the result.
We talked about Arsenal's form earlier. I mean, Spurs' form in terms of results is good. 1-4, drawn 1 in January. Do you see them in good form, or do you see them actually, they beat teams they should and actually they didn't beat Fulham?
No, they didn't play great against Fulham. They actually had a lot of opportunities to win the game, but Fulham always felt like there was something there for them. Against Sheffield United, you don't know if that's just Sheffield United being out of their depth, but it felt like a better performance from Tottenham. I suppose the issue for Jose Mourinho is that Tottenham have got Liverpool on the Thursday and this game's on the Monday. Now, he's somebody usually that takes cup competitions really seriously. I do wonder whether he might rotate a couple just because it's Liverpool on the Thursday, and of course that is such a big game and it is a quick turnaround. He'll feel like he's kind of half second string, sort of half and half team, should be able to beat essentially a League One team. They're in the Championship, but I don't think they will be next year.
The Carabao Cup final isn't until late April, so Jose Mourinho loves a trophy. We know how much Spurs are desperate for a trophy.
Yeah.
How much will he want to stay in the FA Cup, at least until they can see whether they win the Carabao Cup or not?
Well, we know Jose loves winning trophies, don't we? So I think it's absolutely paramount that he tries to win one this season for Spurs. And I think he'll see the FA Cup as a good chance for him to get a major bit of silverware. He's obviously in the cup, the League Cup final as well. So I'd be very surprised if he doesn't pick a really strong side. I think a lot depends on whether he picks Vinicius or Harry Kane. I know Vinicius did well in the last round against Marine. So that'll be interesting to see what he does at the top end of the pitch.
Yeah, and just a quick word on Gareth Ainsworth as well, the job that he's done. You talk about League One team, they've never been in the Championship before this season.
Pound for pound, I mean, there's probably not a better manager than John Coleman maybe at Accrington, but I mean, what he has done with that club. I mean, when they were in League One, you felt like they were maybe a League Two team, and their style of play is different to most sides, and their set pieces are dangerous from them, and they're so competitive, and they have increased the quality as time has gone on. I suppose I was speaking to a former Wycombe player actually about Ainsworth, and he loved him. Just wondering if he's sort of stereotyped though as somebody that can't manage sort of say a bigger Championship team because of his style of play. And I suppose someone like Sean Dyche has got that in the Premier League, and it can be a little bit harsh. He's not linked with any kind of more glamorous jobs, but he's certainly done a brilliant one at Wycombe.
Yeah, it's a really good point actually, and he's done a fantastic job. So Betfred's selection for this game?
I'm going both teams to score, but Spurs narrow victory. You've not said the same, have you?
I think Wycombe will play it physical. They'll play it long. I think they'll make it difficult. I think I can see them scoring, but actually I think Spurs will end up scoring more and probably a couple more actually. Mm-hmm.
I'm going for Tottenham to win and under 3.5 goals, which is a bet I like when Spurs are playing away from home.
Okay. Best fantasy football picks this weekend, where each of us pick a player that we believe will stand out Who have you gone for?
I've gone for Phil Foden, Man City. I thought he was excellent in the last round against Birmingham. I think he'll go and just show everyone what a good player he is when he gets an opportunity. I think it's a good chance for him to go and showcase himself again.
Mark?
Maddison, James Maddison, player I criticised a few weeks. It wasn't that I was criticising necessarily, it's just that he wasn't playing to the level that he was capable of. And I think it was down to the injuries that he's had, but now he's definitely taken on the responsibility in terms of goal scoring as well, because Vardy, I'm not sure that Vardy's 100% at the moment, and he's not making maybe quite as many runs, but Maddison's playing back to the levels that he was when sort of, he first really burst onto the scene.
Scored last night, and he's a confident lad as well, isn't he? I like the way he talks. You want that. It's a nice arrogance, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. I think his interviews and the way he comes across, he seems a really good lad, and you like to see lads doing well. And he's obviously grabbing his opportunity at the moment. I think he's scored 3 and 3 now, so excellent player and a good selection headache for Gareth Southgate as well.
Okay, I've gone for Timo Werner. You mentioned him earlier. I do think he will start at the weekend. I think this is a great opportunity for all the players who are perhaps lacking a bit of confidence, and certainly the big signings to come in. And again, like the last round, Timo Werner scored. I can see him starting and maybe even getting a brace in this one. Okay, let's go to the team treble now, which is 4-1. Each of us pick a team that we think will win.
I've gone for Manchester City.
Why is that only 4-1? Is that because you've gone for City? Yeah.
City, yeah. I've gone to City. I'm sorry. I just can't see any other. I thought it was an easy one. I'm pleased you came to me first.
So, I mean, there's no real way to. We've already spoken about it, haven't we?
Yeah, I just think that it's an absolute banker that they'll win. I think whatever team they put out, they'll just have too much quality.
Okay, I think you're right there. Mark?
I'm going down to League One. Sunderland to beat Shrewsbury. Sunderland lost to Plymouth on Tuesday, but actually dominated the shot count. They only conceded 3 shots in the whole game, and they've conceded 2 of those goals. I think that Lee Johnson, I think he's somebody that will get it right. He's a bit of a streaky manager, and he has ups and downs, but I think that he's working with some real talented players there. And you've spoken about the sort of issues really at Shrewsbury at the moment. Obviously wish Steve Cottrell all the best, but can't be ideal when there's no manager around. And they've been really hit hard by COVID. They've had a lot of games called off, so I'm not sure if their players are fit either. And they played a cup tie in midweek against Southampton. And I think that takes a lot out of you anyway when you're sort of upping your levels playing against a Premier League team. So quick turnaround, I think Sunderland win.
Great case for Sunderland. City, pretty much guaranteed. I'm feeling the pressure now. I'm going for Norwich to beat Barnsley. I think both teams will make changes. I think Barnsley are doing exceptionally well considering the budget, the average age they've got, play exciting football. Yep. But Norwich, for me, are the standout side in the Championship this season. I think it's them +1. And even if they do make changes, I can see them winning this one. So Norwich to beat Barnsley is mine. And that's it. Alex, enjoyed it?
Yeah, great. Always nice to come down and see you.
Looking forward to get back on the M40?
As long as there's no vans tippling fences out the back of the van, then I'll be all right.
Well, look, great to see you. Thanks very much. And as ever, Mark, great stuff. Thank you. Okay, that is it for this week. We're back next week to see if Alex's predictions are right or not. And we'll look ahead to the big games next weekend, of course. And of course, on behalf of everybody here at Betfred and the Racing Post, please, if you do gamble, gamble responsibly.